Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Andrea from Barn and Brush Co. and this is a tutorial for and I apologize for the lighting. This is a tutorial for the Carrot Co. Peter Rabbit Carrot Co. sign. I apologize, it's upside or reversed. So what you are going to need is, or what you will purchase on my website, which is linked down in the description. You'll purchase the DIY kit. You will get it without it being this color. I just so happened to only have one that I had already stained. You will get all of the pieces to it. And then you will need Antiques Waverly Wax. This here is purchased at Walmart. Now, before I even say all this, you can use whatever you would like. This is just how, if you want it to look like this, then this is what I use. And I'm going to apologize in advance. My dogs are probably going to bark and I don't want to re-record. So I apologize. So we're just going to give it 2 seconds because the UPS man is here. Okay. What I also use, you can use paper plates, you can use paint container, like the paint things that you put your paint in. I use foil because it's easy cleanup and it's just, for me, it's so much easier. Now, my paint. I purchased the big containers. They are this size here from Sherwin-Williams. But if this is your only DIY project, then I would say you could probably just go and get any color from like a craft store. So the orange that we're going to use is called True Penny. If you are wanting the same colors from Sherwin-Williams. True Penny, Oak Moss, and Sand Dollar. Those are the only 3 colors that I use for this project. I will also use for the, you will be able to see like there's some distressing, or not distressing, but like shadowing. I use the wax for that. And then I also use Tim Holtz Distressed Ink. This, as well as these containers, the glue, because I use stick fast glue. All of that is on my Amazon storefront and it is linked in the description below. Okay, I also will be using an angled paintbrush, a smaller one. This here is purchased from Hobby Lobby and it is a 1/4 inch. And then I'll be using the little finger daubers, which are also on my Amazon storefront. A 120 grit sanding block as well. Okay, let's get started. And I apologize, I'm going to pull you right down here so that you can see, hopefully here. Okay. There we go. All right, so the first thing that you want to do is make your, sorry about that. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is oh, and I forgot to tell you, you'll need baby wipes. The baby wipes is what I use to apply the wax on these here. Now, since I already did this, I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to do these here, which is the same exact technique as I did on this. And I usually do the front and the back. Now, this here is not going to look like yours. This one here, there were some issues with it. It came apart. This will not be like yours. Or at least it shouldn't anyway. So whenever you are doing this, you will use the same concept with this. Now I use gloves just because I don't want my fingers all a mess. And I reuse my gloves. Saves money. Okay, again, like I said, this will be the same concept on this here as I do on these. Okay, now I'm just going to take a regular old, I use unscented To me, it's better, but you can use whatever you want to, whatever you have on hand. And then I use the wax. I'm just going to shake it up a little bit. Take the lid off. And then take my baby wipe. Dip it in there a little bit. I am going to kind of offload it a little bit just so there's not a big chunk. And then I am going to just wipe it. This kind of resembles a stain. So if I would typically get like a Minwax stain, I would just use a dry rag, and I would use a dry rag and just wipe it on. This is kind of like the same, except for it just needs to be a little bit wet because it is a wax, so it is kind of dilutes it a little bit. Now, I will say, I have sanded your project. However, that still does not mean that it is as smooth as a baby's bottom, because like where this side here goes perfectly fine, this side here, I don't know if you can see that, it kind of is catching and it's kind of going, which therefore it is bringing up the fibers of the baby wipe. And I don't know if you can see, let me try to turn my light back on since, there we go. So as you can see, it's kind of like lifting it up, which means you'll have like little fibers inside or on this here. That's not even a big deal. I usually sand them off, and if not, I'll just kind of pick them off. Or you don't even have to do that at all if you don't want to. And I will go, at the very end, I will go and show you how to put these two together. And this here is the easel stand to be able to hold the sign up. Okay. And then again, see now, like I did this way and it's catching, but if I go down, I'm going with the grain and it's not catching as bad. You can also just dab a little bit if it seems to be catching. And that's all you need to do with that. And like I said, it'll be the same exact thing for the sign here. You just kind of go across and stain it. And then once it dries, you'll be ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and set these aside. The next thing that you want to do, oh, and I did forget to mention as well, I tried to get everything ready, but I did not. You will need makeup sponges, which are also linked in my Amazon storefront. They are just makeup sponges that I use to actually do the painting with. Now, we are going to paint the ones that are this here, sand dollar. I believe that I forgot to show you that because I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologize. So this part here, these here, and as well as the letters all need to be painted in this color. So what we're going to do first, oh, and the frame. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get a piece of masking tape. This makes it so much easier to paint the letters. So we're just going to take a big piece of masking tape and then two little pieces. And then we are going to flip the masking tape over. And then put on that side and that side. So that holds it down. So that holds holding it in place. Then we're going to put our letters on here. And then we're going to, so it'll be a lot easier for us to paint them. So that they're not kind of going all around. And I put them up on the side like it would there. And then we are ready. So I'm going to put a little bit of our paint onto a piece of foil, shake it up. Now, this is any paint that you want to use. I would assume that chalk paint would work. I think it is a little bit thick, but it still should work for you. I just use this. This is a satin base paint that you would use for like your walls and stuff in your home. So I am just putting some paint right here, and then I'm gonna make sure that there's not a whole lot, because if you push down really, really hard, you are gonna get paint along the sides of the letters. Now, if you want to paint the sides of the letters as well, that is completely fine. You can also even use a paintbrush if you're wanting to do the sides or in the fronts. You can use that. This is your project. It's completely up to you. However, I like the burnt edges of the wood, so I'm gonna go ahead and use the baby or the makeup sponge so that it will paint easier and not be as much of a risk as to getting paint down along the sides. So I have a light amount on there. See, it's not dripping, it's not nothing, it's very light whenever I'm very lightly patting it on my skin. So then we're going to do the same thing with the letters. I'm very lightly tapping it. I am not pushing, because if you push, that's a sponge, the little paint is going to come out. Now, you will still get a little bit, and I still do get a little bit along the sides. I just kind of run my finger across there. And then I'm just dabbing it to make sure that the majority of it's off of there. And then just tapping it all across the letters. So much easier than using a paintbrush. And also with the tape there, I don't have to worry about putting it on my fingers and dabbing it that way, so it goes a lot quicker. Now, if you can still see little bits and pieces of the wood, you can, just kind of brush it a little bit, or you can just go over another coat, however you would like to. Sometimes with brushing it, it does get it into or onto the sides. I'm just going to go and give it a real quick second coat. And there we go. And then, once we are done, we can just pick the tape up and just kind of hang it somewhere to dry. I'm just going to hang it onto the side of my table here while it dries. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and do this thing here. Now, this part here is engraved. You will notice that because I can stick my fingernail inside of it. So it is a lot deeper than this part here, which is actually just scored. So this here is just very, very minimally, it's kind of almost like a line drawn on there, where this one here would be almost like a coloring book or like a groove in there. So a coloring book might have been a bad example, but it's a deeper groove. So I would say, instead of, if you do a paintbrush, you are going to get it deep inside of those grooves, and no matter what you do, it's going to be very, very hard to get it out. So I highly suggest using the brushes or the makeup sponges. So again, just like you did with the letters, you take it on, and then I would go even a little bit lighter on this part here, because it can go down into the grooves a lot easier. I'm gonna get some more paint on there, dab it off, and then I'm gonna start over on this end because I want to get the majority of it off. and then go light, very, very lightly. And you are probably, since you're going so light, you are likely going to need a couple of coats. I mean, I'm technically already giving it a few coats because I'm going over it several times, but I'm talking about like going over it once, several times, and then going over it again. So, and this also will be, since you are putting such a thin layer on, it will dry very quickly. So now this is just a tiny bit tacky, which is okay. I'm going to go ahead and do the second coat across that. And as I'm doing this side here is going to be drying. Okay, and that's how it should look there. We're going to go ahead and set this to the side. If you do have some across the top, you could just take a baby wipe, put it on your finger, and just go across the top and across the bottom. And there you go. So we're going to go ahead and set this aside. Now, these ones here, you got to go even lighter because since they are so, not as deep, it is a very good possibility that you will get, you will end up getting paint in them. So what I do is I use this here. It is the Cricut tool, but it is just the straight one. You could also use a straight pin. You can also use the one that looks like a dental pick as well. However, I just prefer this one here. Same exact thing. Get some on there. Now I'm going to go ahead and start over here. We're going to cover this with the carrots, so I kind of offload even more over here. And then just start. Yeah, see, I already got some in there. It's kind of inevitable with these here. And I'm going even lighter. Now, if you can, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, but there is some paint inside of there. So while it's still wet, you definitely want to do that. You just go ahead and take this and go across to dig out some of that paint. It's not very much paint, so, and even whenever it dries, I mean, it will dry, so where you can see it, but I always like to get ahead of the game and grab it before it dries. Let me do it a little bit harder here and kind of just brush so that you can see what it looks like if it's pretty much in there. And as you can see right in there, it's in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my tool and just follow that line. There you go. And then we're going to go ahead and work on the other side. And now, see, I had a lot of paint in there. You see how I offload that? If I did that on here, I would have had it filled with paint. So that means that I need to really offload some onto here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start over on this side. Yep, Instead, I got some in there again. Like I said, I don't think that there is ever a time that I don't get some in there. So when I am doing projects that it is scored, I always get out my tool. And sometimes with the laser, sometimes it doesn't get it very much in there. It's like literally just the surface. And if you're pushing too hard, you're gonna go cry right across it. So you just gotta be a little bit of pressure, but not too much pressure that you're going a whole way across there. Because then it puts an indent into the wood. Which I will say that I've done hundreds of times. I get ahead of myself and I start going a little bit too quick. Okay, now I'm just going to just slide it across. There's some wood grain showing here that I want to get covered up. There, I got it again. There again. And see, I did that again. So I was going a little bit too quick. Do you see what I'm saying? Like right in there with the W. Now I can cover that up. It wasn't too thick, so I'll just cover that up with just a little bit of paint. And you know what? It also gives it the look of being worn, which is the exact look that we're going for. So that's why I'm not too worried about making these mistakes, because it kind of just adds to the rustic and oldness of it. So I'm going to look to see if I got any on the sides. I did a little bit, although I'm not like super worried about it. But there we go. Next, we're going to set that to the side. And next we're going to do the frame. Now the frame right here is where, since this is so thin, this is where I end up getting a lot onto the sides. And I have to definitely use the baby wipe to get them off. I also need my glasses for this because I got to go really close. And I will just kind of brush it. Now I'm able to do this back and forth because there's no letters or anything that I don't need to get into. So I try to go across the edge of this and then forward to there, so that eliminates as much as possible, which, I mean, you can still see that I'm still getting some of it on there, but it's not as much as if I would go with a paintbrush. You could also just dab it like this. I will sometimes do that. It just takes a little bit longer, and you have to go over it a couple more times. And this here gets it into the wood grains. Okay. And then you'll see kind of like over in here where it'll probably need another coat, but that is completely up to you, however you want to do it. Now, if you were using it as a, if you wanted to like stain it brown, you can do that as well. And then you would do the same, just with a baby wipe. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my baby wipe and just kind of go along the edges here, trying to get all of the pieces that or all of the stuff that I missed. Now, if you're doing this, you are going to, it's raw wood that has not been sanded on the edges, so you are definitely going to get some baby wipe fuzz from this because it's ripping up the baby wipe. And then I just go ahead and just try to pick it off as much as possible. All right, good. Now we're gonna go ahead and set that aside. Now, while those are drying, which they're probably already dry, we're gonna go ahead and get another piece of the foil. And then we're gonna get a cup and we're gonna put a little bit of water in it. And then we're going to go ahead and get our carrot done. I can't remember if I sanded that or not, so we're just going to give it a quick sand. So we're just going to put a tiny bit of our orange. And then I'm going to take my angled paintbrush and I'm going to make sure that it gets really, really, really wet. And then I'm not going to offload it at all. I'm going to take that much water and put it on my thing. I'm going to do it again. So I have like a little puddle of water right here. And then I'm going to add a little bit of paint into that so that it's almost like a watercolor. Then I'm going to paint my carrots in a very, very watered down orange. So you'll probably need more water because this wood will soak up this water like crazy. You can do it as dark or as light as you want to. I'm doing it fairly light. And then I'll do a little tiny bit of a darker one over top of it. Now, we're going to let that dry. And then we're going to do the same thing with the green. We're going to do the same exact thing. Bunch of water. And then we're going to do that with the stem or the greenery part of it. Oh, I grabbed a little bit too much paint, so I'm going to water that down tremendously. And I'm just kind of dabbing it. So whenever I have a little bit more paint on my brush in some areas, it'll kind of make it look splotchy, which is the look that I'm going for. And again, this is your project. You can do it however you would like. Now I'm just going to turn that around because I'm going to let this dry a little bit. And for time purposes, I'm just going to jot this with a heat gun for a quick minute. Okay. Now, while the top is still, because it was quite a bit of water, while the top is still drying, we're going to go ahead and work on the carrots. So I'm going to wet this, offload it just a smidge. So I'm just touching the tip here onto the baby wipe. So it offloads the majority of the water. And then I'm just putting a little bit of paint onto the top of this paintbrush, and then I'm going to follow the lines so it'll be a darker on the outside so you can see. And what the water will do is, and as I'm putting it onto the tip And with the water in it, it kind of gives it that shadowed or ombre effect. I'm going to go down the side here. And then with it still on there, I'm just going to kind of brush it in the middle. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing with the side here. And now I am not worried about the little, the scored lines on this one here, because they're just the little pieces of the carrot. So I'm okay with them. It's not nothing that I have to read. It's just an extra effect to it. So I'm not worried about it. If you want to, you can definitely go in through and, you know, take parts of that out. So I'm making it darker in between. So like if you're going behind the carrot, so this carrot is behind this one here, it is going to be darker because you're going to see that shadow there. So I'm making it darker up here and across there. And then for the next one. And I'm doing the same thing with this one here, since it is behind the top one. I'm making sure that in between here is a lot darker. And then I'm just going to take my paintbrush and paint down. There you go. So that is what you will see. Now it will look a little bit different once we actually have it dried. So I'm going to completely make sure that this is all clear of the orange. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Get it wet, offload it just slightly, just the tip. And then I'm going to see where these little lines are. I'm just going to kind of just dab it in the lines, across the top, across the sides. Get some more paint, offload it, tip of the paintbrush, and then I'm just kind of just dabbing it a little bit everywhere. I'm really focusing on where the little squigglies are, so like where the leaves would be. And then I'm doing it on the top here as well. And then I'm going to run across the bottom and across the top. And that's it. Now we're going to let this dry. So now I may want to add a little bit here and there. So I'm going to let it dry, but for time purposes, we're going to go ahead, because I don't know how to stop this video and then restart it. So we're just going to go ahead and just dry it now. Okay. And then as you will see, you have the shadows up there and the shadows on the sides here. Now we are going to add just one step further to this, and we are going to make it, we're going to dirty it up because, you know, it's in a garden, right? So we definitely want our carrots, well, number one, I like the rustic-y, antique, old look, but I want it to look a little bit more realistic. So we're going to go ahead, do the same thing, but we're going to use the antique wax this time. So I just did that. You can put it on a piece of paper. I just use a lid. So get your brush filled, offload the bottom part of that, and then I just take a tiny little bit. Now this is going to go a long way. So if I got a little bit more on there than I wanted to, I'm just going to take it off and just swipe it. And then I'm going to add it to the edge of that, like where the carrot would be underneath. And then the same thing with that. And then do it with this side. Yeah, so you have the carrots underneath. Now I'm just going to take a piece of that or some of this and just kind of just dump it into, so I have a little bit of like a dirty-ish color on my brush. And then just kind of focus, I'm going to focus a lot on the ends. And just make it dirtied up. So that is where you do that. So you can see that this one here is popping out. So it looks like these two are underneath. And then this one here is on the top. And then I'm going to do it again with the top of the carrots here. So I'm going to kind of go around here. Not as much on the lines, but just kind of giving it like a dirty overlay with a couple of pieces that kind of just, I don't know, just like the shadowed areas. Not a whole lot, but enough to make it cute. All right, and that's it for the carrot. We're gonna go ahead and set this aside. Now we're gonna go to this here, because this here is the banner, so we have to put some shadows in there. So you can go ahead and you can do that. However, your paintbrush will glide a lot easier if you have it sanded down. Now, you probably will, if you have a brand new sander, you probably will need to make sure that it gets pretty smooth at first. If I would do that with a brand new one, it would probably take all the paint off. So you definitely want to use one that is a little bit smooth and worn. So I always save one back for that purpose. And while we're in the sanding process, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with this. And then we'll get back to that later. All right. So this here will go on top of this. If you like it just like this, perfect. You can be done. But we're going to dirty it up a little bit because, you know, if I haven't said it enough, I like my things rusty, dusty, crusty. So again, we're going to go ahead and offload that. I'm going to add a little bit more to it than before. And then I'm just going to go across the bottom. I want it to be really crusty dusty. And then again, across the top. Now I have a little bit too much water on mine, so I'm going to offload it again. And you could tell that by if it's just, you just see the pile of water and it's not really having the wax or the paint kind of spread or ombre effect. It's just kind of water's just everywhere. And then again across the bottom here. You'll also know if your paintbrush gets a little bit dry, you will see it kind of start to really pull. And like I said, it's completely up to you however you want to do that. If you like that effect and you like that look, then by all means, you can keep it that way. Now, this here would be the inside part of the banner. But this part here, since it is close to this part, it is going to have a natural shadow. So, same thing, have it, offload it. And then I'm going to take a little bit, I'm going to offload this just a tiny bit more. And then I'm just going to go right across the edge of this. It has a little bit too much water yet. And then paint it in a little bit so that it has all of the look of it, because we want it to definitely be like a little bit of a darker shade than the first one, because it has that shadow. So as you can see right there, so I added more down there that gave it the ombre effect, and then I added a little bit more afterwards just to emphasize that crease right there. And then we're going to do the same thing right here, because right here is where it is folded as well. And I can tell that I have a little bit too much paint on my brush, or not paint, water. And then there's that there. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side. And of course, you know, both sides are not going to look exactly alike, so just do your best. And honestly, like, I have no expectations for them to look the same because it's all hand painted. So as long as you don't have your expectations up too high, I mean, everything is hand painted, you're never gonna, it's not all gonna look the same. Expect it to be, each one is going to be unique. And that's the beauty, and that's what I love about hand painted stuff. There you go. All right, now we are going to let that dry, because the wax does take a little bit, especially if you have it thicker, the wax will take a little bit extra time to dry. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and pitch this or set it aside. I know that I won't need it anymore, but if you are wanting, you know, to maybe touch something up, you definitely don't want to waste your paint. So go ahead and set it to the side. We'll set that out to the side, and what we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and work on the frame. And then it's about time to start gluing. Okay. We are going to dirty this up a little bit with a dauber, but we're going to go ahead and get it onto the frame first. So let's get that. Now, I always run this across with my sanding block just so that it is very, very smooth. Okay, and I always kind of like line it up, see where I'm going first, because if I put glue on it, I can't really put it across there, so I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing first. Okay, so I line it up. Okay, I know where I'm going. Now with me, you won't have this problem because it'll lay flat, but with me, I got a little bit of a issue with it not laying flat because of that defect on the back. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab my glue. You can use any glue. The only glue that I do not recommend is hot glue, because you will have it, it does have that, it won't sit flush. My glue is almost gone, so it's going to take a bit to come out. Okay, and then you just want a thin layer. If you are using this glue, disclaimer, it will dry very quickly and it will glue your fingers together. I promise you, if you get them on there. I've done it multiple times. And then as you're putting it on, it's going to spread, so whenever you go across the edges, it will get on your fingers as well. So I'm going to go flush across here. And with this one, you have to work fairly quickly because it is, so I'm just kind of running my fingers across, making sure that I'm fairly close. Now I just moved that. If you have clips, you can definitely use clips. I got mine at the Dollar Tree, and I will show you here in a second. So now that it is down, these ones here were at the Dollar Tree. This was a couple years ago. I don't know if they still have them or not. I haven't been there in a while. But you can go ahead and clip it down if you're using a separate glue. Now with this glue here, I really don't need anything because it's on. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get the Tim Holtz Distressed Ink. This is my favorite. The oxidized does not work as well. Or, well, to me it doesn't work as well, but it also doesn't give it the color that I like. So I'm going to go ahead, dip it a couple times in there, and then I'm going to go across the edge here. Now, I do not have a, like this here is just kind of willy-nilly. Like I just do it however I want to do it, and I don't worry about it because it's like dirty. It's, you don't, there's no specific rhyme or reason. I'll do the inside. Some will be closer to the, so you see how some will be on top of it, some won't be, some, I might even miss parts. That's how I like it. I like it to not be perfect. So, there we go. That is on. Now, we're going to go ahead and set this aside. We're not done with it yet. But we are going to go ahead and get our letters. We're going to pop them off of the tape. Now, I could go ahead and put these on there. However, whenever I go and do this here, it's going to rip up your dauber. So I'm just going to take a sanding block. Be very, very careful doing this because if I'm sanding this real quick and I get it caught on that, it could snap the letter in half. Ask me how I know. I've done it millions of times. And then I either have to cut a new one out or I have to piece it together, especially this one. So this one here, I'm just covering my hand with it and just moving it slightly. Just with that little bit, it made it a lot smoother. So whenever I do this here, it's going to go across a lot smoother than it would as if I didn't do it like that. Or if I just did it without having it sanded. Again, if you're using a brand new sponge, you could probably end up taking off all of the paint and then you'll have to repaint. So I highly suggest using one that is fairly used. Okay. Now, I could probably put these letters on and then do them, but I'm just going to do it real quick. Again, I'm not even dipping it into the stuff anymore because I've used it several times. And I'm just kind of dirtying it up here and there. No rhyme, no reason, just kind of, I'm not even looking to where, or how much is on there. Because I want it to be random and imperfect. I am, focusing on the edges just because it's a lot easier. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and start gluing these down. If you are using the stick fast glue, please remember that it will dry very quickly and you could glue your fingers together. So please be very, very careful. So I have some and I'm just grabbing the outside edges so that I don't touch the glue. And now this here will be you will be able to, you know, kind of see where you're going. So just kind of, and I hope that, see, and I just still got my fingers. I don't even know how I got the glue there, but it did, and I almost glued it together. So I'm just kind of very carefully hovering over, I'm just hovering over the lines. These score lines are there so that you know where to place it so that it's all straight. So I'm just kind of hovering over the lines, and then I'm going to place it down. And you can move it slightly, but not for very long. And now I have it up closer to me because if I put it down here, I can't see where that line is up there. If I have it this way, I can't see the bottom. If I have it this way, I won't be able to see this side. So I kind of have it at an angle. And then I also am looking all the way around to make sure that you can't see any more of those lines, because even though the letters are bigger, if you are slightly off, they are at least, you know, they are a little bit bigger so that you can see where to put them. So you might be able to see them if you are slightly off. Again, doing the same thing with this. I'm going to hold it down with my finger as I'm checking out that. And now I moved it. And you got to be very careful because I moved it across there. And then I will also hold it in front of me to make sure that it's actually straight. And now you want to be careful, like by pressing them really down, because even with this paint, or even with this glue, if you have a hard time moving it, even just like this a little bit, I feel like what's happened to me before is if I go and I press, you have no, like, you don't realize, but you're like pushing and it slides. And then if you're just holding and then you get up and you look and it's like cockeyed and halfway across the thing, and it's, so you want to be very careful and then just leave it. And that is something that I have to tell myself repeatedly, because I sometimes get in a hurry and I do that, and then I end up ruining a project. Okay. And you just do the same thing with all of them. And this part, I feel like, is the part that takes, I would say probably takes the most time, because you want to make sure that you are right inside of those lines so that no lines are showing. I mean, and if not, like I said, I've done it before where I've had a little bit of the line showing, and honestly, like, as long as you're not like a complete perfectionist, I mean, if you are, that's okay. And I mean, it's, hopefully you're using a glue that you can lift up, but honestly, whenever you are looking at it from way back, you know, say you have it on your mantle, you're not really going to see the little bit of the line that's sitting there. Okay, and now we're going to go through this one. And last one. Okay. Now, we're going to go ahead and do this, but first we're going to take the distressed ink and we're just going to run it across the sides. And of course, this is optional. If you do not want to do it, you don't have to. And it's just a little tiny bit of extra distressing. If you want to do more, you can definitely do more. I'll probably do a smidge more. And then we're going to go ahead this is just about gone, so I'll have to get a new one for the next project. All right, same way with this. I would hold it up, make sure that you're within the lines, but just be careful whenever you're holding it, because if you move it slightly, so I'm holding it on this end and on this end tightly till it grips, and then I'll just kind of push it in the middle to have it grip a little bit more. And there's what it looks like so far. And now this here, that seems to be dried. I'm going to line it up here to make sure that everything is good to go. I'm going to go ahead and add some glue. And then I'm going to line it up and line it up there. And I'm just touching the sides and pressing on the sides so that it doesn't move. Once those are secure, then I'm just going to very gently pat it down. Okay, so here's what it looks like so far. And then you want to go ahead and add on your carrots. Now, here's where I get a little extra. I need just a smidge more dirtying it up. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I'm going to add just a bit more. And I'm going to set this aside because I'm probably going to end up ripping up this this dauber sponge. If I can find a place to put it, because my place is a mess. I'm going to go across the sides here and a top. So there's what it looks like there. I just added just a little bit more. I'm going to add a little bit more to the bottom, the sides, down the sides where it is, and then just down the middle. So there is with the extra dirty. Okay. Okay, now you want to be careful. I'm going to go onto the sides. Now, I'm just hovering over it at first because I want to make sure that I get a line. And now I'll hold my fingers. So right here, I can hold, and I'm holding here. So while I'm guiding it, I'm making sure that it's flush, but also watching with my eyes to make sure that it is straight. So here is my hands. I'm looking. And even with my hands, I'm still kind of, I mean, it might look flush down there, but there we go. And it's still moving, so I'm going to try not to mess with it. And then just tap it a little bit. And it's not going to move anyway. Okay. And there you go. That is your Peter Rabbit Carico sign. We're going to go ahead and put that on there. Now all we need is the stand. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my area just a smidge because my luck, I would end up putting the finished sign in this wet paint. So we're going to get rid of anything that is going to ruin our hard work. So there we go. All right, we're going to go ahead and sit that to the side and let me show you how to do these. Now, I always at least run a little bit of a sanding block on all my stuff. It just kind of gives a, it just kind of gets rid of that little bit of a roughness that it has to it. That's it. Nothing majorly. I mean, it's just the stand, so it's not like it's going to worry about. So you should have the one that has it towards you and one at the top. So up and out and down towards you. To do these, you're going to put them together and it makes an easel stand that your sign will sit right on top of. And then whenever you're ready to have it stored away, you just take that off of there, undo that, and you can store it flat in a drawer or in your storage container. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight or today with the Carico sign. And I would love it if you go ahead and join my Facebook group. I have it linked below. I would absolutely love to see your finished project. So go ahead and send a request, jump on in. And not only with that, there is so much inspiration in that group that it is wonderful. So you won't regret it. Thank you so much. And please subscribe. I will be doing all of my DIY videos here. So I would love it if you would please subscribe. Please join my Facebook group and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.